Hey everyone. When we left off with our last lesson, we were on page 193. So today we're going to start on page 194, just doing a couple problems before we move on to our new lesson for today. So pause the video, turn to page 194. Remember that you need to have your secret code cards. You always want to have a whiteboard with you and your math journal, of course. All right. So we were talking last time, if you remember, about those scrambled numbers and how they're sometimes putting them out of order, and you need to know your place value. And we wrote at the very top of page 193, write the order. So we always have the ones, the tens, the hundreds, and then the thousands. And remember, thousands and hundreds are separated by that comma, and we say the word thousand when we see that. So we worked on unscrambling those place value names. Today, we're going to work on a couple of these problems here because these are some tricky ones. All right, so let's look at number 11, and we're on page 194. Solve each problem and label your answer. Remember, these word problems are a little bit different than doing the deal because we're drawing our place value pictures. So let's read this one together. It says, this bookstore received 35 boxes of books. Each box held 10 books. How many books did the store receive? So if you remember, in our last unit, we worked on multiples of 10, right? And multiplying those. So we've got 35 boxes. Each box has 10 books. We want to know how many are all together. So we're going to write that equation. 35 boxes, and each box has 10 inside of it. So we learned we can cover up that 0 and then tell what we know. 35 times 1, right? 35 in one group is just 35. But then we have to tack that 0 back on the end, right? So that's how we would solve that problem using those multiples of 10. I'm going to put my label on there, which is books. But we need to show our answer by drawing a place value drawing, a proof drawing we call it. All right, so let's think about that. If I have 35 boxes and each box has 10, remember that we draw a 10 stick to show groups of 10, right? Instead of having 10 little ones, we have a 10 stick. So we have one right long stick to show 10, okay? So if I do that, there's 10, 20 books, 30 books, 40 books, 50 books, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 books, right? So here's 100 books, but it's how many 10 sticks? It's 10, right? It's 10 groups. Well, look at this. They have 35 boxes, and each box has 10. So here's one box, two boxes. All together, I have 10 boxes. I don't want to keep drawing my 10 sticks, right? So instead of drawing all these 10 sticks, I can just draw one big square, one big box, right? That would represent all of those books. 10 sticks, but that means 100 books. So there's 10 boxes, but 100 books inside. So instead of drawing all my 10 sticks, cross that off, I'm going to draw my boxes. So there's, right, 10 boxes, 20 boxes, 30 boxes of books, right? So there's boxes, but remember how many is inside? There's 100 books inside, and they're asking us about books. So here's 10 boxes, 20 boxes, 30 boxes, and I need 35 boxes. So here's 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35 boxes. But remember, each box has 10. So all together here, we've got 50 books, not boxes. So if I count that with my proof drawing, I have 100, 200, 300, plus 50 more, I have 350 books, not boxes, right? They tell me there are 35 boxes. That's what I drew. But how many books are there? And we just counted 350. That's what we got here by doing our multiples of 10. Okay, so you have to be looking at that label and really thinking, what am I drawing pictures of and what are they asking me about, right? They give you information about boxes and the number of books. So you really have to be thinking. Sometimes if we draw that equation, we can solve it pretty quick, but it's kind of confusing. Okay, how do I draw that in a picture? So here's the way we do that with our proof drawing. Okay, our place value drawing proves there are 350 books in that shipment of books. Okay, so we just wanted to review that. We've done it a couple of times in some other spots in our math journal, but I wanted to point that out today before we start on our new lesson today, which is all about rounding. So the next page is page 195. And if you look at the very bottom, down here gives you the big idea. We're going to learn about rounding to the nearest hundred. All right, so we'll talk about that. But I want to point out the very top of the page, we always have that vocabulary box. Okay, and the word estimate is up here, and the word round. An estimate, if you look in the very back of your math journal, you have a glossary. You can find what that word means, estimate. You can also look back at the beginning of our unit, and you had some flashcards that you can cut out. You could leave in your book if you'd like, right? That showed us what some of these words mean. I see the word estimate here, and on the back, it talks about making a reasonable guess. Okay, I'm going to flip back to my glossary so I can show you that you can look in your glossary and find that same word, estimate, a reasonable guess about how many or how much, right? So we're not giving an exact answer. We're saying, oh, it's about this much or about this many. Okay, so it's an estimate. We're taking a reasonable guess. Reasonable means it would make sense. It's not something crazy out there, right, in left field. So let me show you how we're going to learn to round to the nearest hundred. All right, let's look at page 195. We've got a word problem here that says, Tasha read 3 books over the summer. Here is the number of pages in each book. So it gives us the title and it gives us the number of pages. It says, about how many pages did Tasha read? And then our job is to explain how we made our estimate, right? So that word estimate means about how many. I want you to circle both of those. Okay, it's that word about. That's so important. It's not an exact answer. You're not going to add these together, right? They want to know about how many. So we're going to use rounding to figure that out. The book Watership Down had 494 pages. Okay, so here is my 494 using my secret code cards. Okay, I want to make an estimate, and I have to start to think. All right, 494. If I were to look at a number line, I have to think, where would this number be on a number line between hundreds? All right, so I drew a little bit of a number line on my whiteboard. Number line starts at a 0, right? And if I were going to hop by 100, I would land at 100, right? Because 0 plus 100 more is 100. And I'm going to hop another 100. So I'm adding another group of hundreds. From 100, now I have 200. I'm going to hop again, every time adding 100, a group of 100. So you'll notice my place value, my 100 place is changing, right? I had 100, now I have 2 of them, now 3. I keep going, right? 4 and 5. I stopped my number line at 500 today. Remember, they start at 0 because 0 to 100, there's still 100 hops in between there. All right. So if our number is 494, we want to know where would that fall on our number line. Okay. My secret code cards can help me with that. I already know if I take away my 1s and my 10s, right? It's going to be between 400, and then I'm going to add 100 to that. What would be the next 100? It would be 500. So my 494 is between 400 and 500. I have to think, which one is it closer to? If I were going to continue to hop from 494 to 500, would it be closer to that 500? Or if I hopped backwards to get to 400, would it be closer to that? So think about it. 494, I've already gone 94 hops. Think about how many more hops I have to go to get to 500. 494, 495, 496, 497, 498, 499, 500. I have 6 hops to go, right? If I want to go back to 400, I have to go back 94 hops. So is it closer to go to 400 or to go to 500? Hopefully, you can see it's closer to go 6 more hops to 500. So that's how we're going to round that number. 494, right, is between 400 and 500, and it's closest to 500 because I only have 6 hops left. Let me zoom that in for you. There we go. So now the book Sounder, 128 pages. So here are my secret code cards. 128. I already know, using my secret code cards, it's between 100, and then if I add another 100, because I'm rounding to the nearest 100, it's going to be between 100 and 200. So I'm going to write that over here, 100 and 200. Okay, 128. I've gone 28 hops. Now, if I want to keep hopping to 200, right, is it going to take me longer, or is it going to be quicker to get back to 100? Think about that. I've gone 28. If I were to count how many more I'd need to go, it's a lot, right? We're talking like 72 more hops to be able to get to where we need to go. So 128 is closest to 100. It would take me too long to get to 200. So I'm going to circle that one. Okay, the Secret Garden, 368. And if I have 368, it's going to be between 300 and what's my next hop? You're right, 400. So between 300 and 400. Okay, here's one thing I want to point out. If we're not sure, we don't want to do all that counting to see how many hops to the next 100, look at your tens place. Okay, I have 6 tens. I have 2 tens here. I have 9 tens here. Okay, when we're rounding, if we have 5 tens, we're going to go up. So we're going to round up. If I have 5 or more tens, I'm going to round up. Okay, if I have less than that, I'm going to round down. So I look at my tens place. I have 6 tens. That's more than 5. So I know I'm going to round up. So I'm going to be closer to 400 than I am to 300. All right. Now we can answer the question because it asked us about how many pages did Tasha read. So we rounded 494 up to 500. 128 we rounded down to 100 because it's closer to that. 368 we rounded up to 400. So now all I have to do is circle or add together the ones that I circled to get my answer. So I'm going to add together 500 plus 100 plus 400 to give me an estimate, a reasonable guess, right? When I add, I always start in my ones column. I don't have any tens. Here are my hundreds. I have 5 hundreds plus 1 more is 6 hundreds plus 4 more. I have 6 plus 4. That's 10 hundredths. 10 hundredths, right? The word or the number 10, 10 hundredths is actually 1,000. So she read about 1,000 books. Okay? So we will write 1,000, not books, pages. And then it says to explain. Okay, so you're going to write down, I rounded 494 to 500. That's what we did here. 128 to 100. And 368 to 400. Right? So you rounded. And then you added up those numbers. Then I added up the rounded numbers. Okay, just a reminder, I know it's been a while. When I'm writing in the math journal, you're doing the same thing, right? You've got the ability to pause this video. So you can pause it and copy down what I'm writing. You don't have to try to keep up with me. I want you to be paying attention and listening and doing what I'm doing. But if you get a little bit behind, just pause the video. Okay, so today, remember, we're rounding to the nearest 100. So we're going in hops of 100. Let's do some practice down here. Okay, we're going to look at some of these. We're not going to do all of them. Okay. We've already done 128, right? We did that one above, so we don't need to do that. Let's look at 271. I have 200s, so my next hop would be to 300. So let's write 300 down here. I already know it's between 200 and 300. Okay, remember that little trick I taught you? Look at your tens place. 5 or more means you're going to round up. So if I have 271, it's going to be closer to hop to 300. Otherwise, I have to hop 71 hops back. Think about 71 out of 100 hops. That's a lot, right? 50 would be halfway. So you're more than halfway. So 271 would be rounded up to 300. Okay, and remember, if you need, you can draw. You could also use your secret code cards when you're working on this independently. Let's try let's go to number 5. I have 649. So I know I'm already between 600, and if I add 100 to that, I'm going to be at 700. So I'm between 600 and 700. Remember, I'm going to look now to my tens place. That's why it's important to know what each digit represents. I have 4 tens. Remember, I said if you have 5 or more, you're going to round up. 5 or more. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That includes 5. Well, that's not 5. So I'm going to round down. 649 rounded to the nearest 100 would be 600. Okay, let's try 2 more. Number 7, 550. I already know by looking at my hundreds place. It's between 500, and if I were to add 100 more, it would be 600. 500 to 600 is 100 hops. Okay, 550. If I look at that tens place, remember, 5 or more, we're going to go up. Here it is, 550 exactly. It's right halfway in between. But when it's right in the middle, I'm going to round up to 600. Okay, let's try one more. Let's look at number 8. The number 62. Right? I have 2 ones, 6 tens. How many hundreds do I have? I don't have any hundreds, right? I could put that in there if I want to remind myself that. So I don't have any hundreds. Remember when I looked at our number line earlier? Our number line always starts at a 0. Right? So 0 plus 100 more is 100. Anything smaller than that, right, goes in between in here. So for this one, 62, if I were to add 100 to 0, that's what I would do. I'm going to start at 0. There's nothing there, right? To get to 100. 62 is between 0 and 100. Now, if I look at that tens place, is it closest, right, to the 100 or to the 0? Because it's 5 or larger, I'm going to round up. 62 rounded to the nearest 100 would be 100. Okay, so this is estimating, and we estimate by rounding. All right, so make sure that you're paying attention to what place we're rounding to. We're rounded these to the nearest 100. The next math lesson, we're going to be rounding to the nearest 10. So we're going to be paying attention to different place value numbers. All right, so if you need to rewatch any of this, that's the awesome thing about having that video. Okay, you can always go back and rewatch. On the next page, it's got a lot of problems about estimating. Okay, so remember, when you see in those directions, rounding and estimating, you want to be paying attention to what it's telling you to round to, right? Solve by rounding to the nearest 100. So we're going to take some of those numbers, round them to the nearest 100, like we did on the last page. Okay, so we're going to work a little bit on that tomorrow before we start rounding to the nearest 10. All right, enjoy your day.